key automotive world just got flipped upside down. And if you are in the market for a new truck, you need to pay very close attention because the days of feeling like you need a second mortgage just to afford a pickup are officially over. We are standing at the dawn of a new era in 2026, and it is being driven by price points that were previously thought to be impossible, with new $9,999 pickups finally hitting the market and forcing giants like Ford and Chevy to take a serious look in the rearview mirror. But while the headline figure of $10,000 is enough to grab anyone's attention, the real story is far more interesting and revolves around the philosophy of value and what exactly you are getting for your hard-earned money. Let's be real for a moment. The average price of a new vehicle in the United States has skyrocketed past $48,000, and if you are looking at a full-size truck, you are often staring down a price tag of $50,000 or more, which is absolutely insane for a vehicle that is supposed to be a practical tool. This massive gap in the market has created a vacuum that new players are rushing to fill with stripped-down, no-nonsense workhorses that cut out the fluff and focus on pure utility. One of the most talked-about entries shaking up the status quo is the Dacia Stryker, a model from the European budget brand that is rumored to be arriving with a starting price of around $25,000, which is literally half the cost of its American counterparts. The strategy here is brilliantly simple. They are not trying to beat the big three at their own game by offering luxury. Instead, they are betting that a large segment of buyers just want a reliable truck to haul lumber, navigate muddy job sites, or tow a trailer without paying for heated leather seats and 12-inch touchscreens they never use. However, you have to understand the trade-offs to truly appreciate this shift in the market. And the latest offerings take this concept of minimalism to an extreme that might shock you. Consider the new electric pickup from Slate Auto, a Detroit-based startup backed by Jeff Bezos, which has recently opened reservations for a model with a base price of just $24,950. To hit that incredible number, the engineering team had to make some drastic cuts that harken back to a simpler time in automotive history. We are talking about a two-seat configuration that measures just 14.5 feet long, an estimated range of only 205 miles, and an equipment list that you would expect to see on a car from the 1980s. This truck comes without a stereo system, no speakers, no navigation screen, and get this, it features manual crank windows instead of power ones, leaving you with just a simple smartphone mount on the dashboard to handle your navigation and music needs. This is the budget airline pricing model applied to the automotive industry, where you are paying for a bare bones chassis that gets you from point A to point B. And if you want any amenities like air conditioning, keyless entry, or back seat, the price climbs significantly. While we are not yet seeing a mass market truck at the $9,999 price point, these vehicles at the $25,000 mark are the crucial first step toward that reality, proving that manufacturers can strip costs drastically if they ignore the American consumer's historical preference for massive, heavily equipped vehicles. For decades, less than 5% of new cars in the U.S. were priced under $25,000. But as Chinese automakers already offer EVs under $15,000 with driver assistance overseas, the pressure is on for U.S. companies to innovate or get left behind. This new wave of affordable trucks is not about luxury or status. It is a revolution for the working class. And we are going to dive deep into the specs and features of these incredible budget pickups. What makes this moment in automotive history so incredibly electric is the sheer audacity of these designs, because they are forcing us to ask a question we haven't had to answer in decades. What do you actually need a truck to do? Versus what are you simply paying for because the industry told you to? The Slate Auto model, for instance, features a composite bed that is dent-proof and rust-proof, sacrificing the traditional steel construction for weight savings and cost reduction, which is a genius move when you consider that most fleet vehicles are beaten up within the first year of ownership anyway. You are getting a vehicle that is purpose-built for the job site, the farm, or the delivery route, and it does that one job exceptionally well without the burden of expensive technology that can break down and cost you thousands in repairs down the line. This is the kind of thinking that has made Toyota's Hilux and the old Ford Rangers legendary in developing nations, where reliability and affordability are prized above cup holders and ambient lighting. And now that philosophy is finally washing ashore in North America with a vengeance. But let's talk about the elephant in the room, which is the actual powertrain options available at these rock bottom prices, because you might be surprised to learn that not all of these trucks rely on electric motors to achieve their low costs. While the $24,950 Slate Auto truck is fully electric, offering a surprisingly peppy 0 to 60 time of about 6.5 seconds thanks to its lightweight construction, other manufacturers are taking a completely different route by resurrecting the small displacement internal combustion engine. We are seeing the return of the 3-cylinder turbo diesel engine in several import models, a configuration that was once laughed off the American market, but is now being hailed as a fuel-sipping savior for small business owners who drive hundreds of miles a week. These tiny engines are capable of achieving upwards of 35 miles per gallon on the highway, which is unheard of in the truck segment, and they come mated to simple 5-speed manual transmissions that are nearly bulletproof and cheap to replace if they ever fail. The beauty of this approach is that it sidesteps the current battery supply chain issues and the high cost of lithium, allowing manufacturers to undercut the electric competition while still offering a vehicle that costs pennies to operate compared to a V8 gas guzzler. Now, we have to look at what the big domestic automakers are doing in response to this existential threat, because you can bet that Ford, Ram, and General Motors are not going to sit idly by and watch their market share get eaten by upstarts with aggressive pricing strategies. There are already whispers coming out of Detroit about a stripped-down version of the Ford Maverick that could potentially dip below the $20,000 mark, and Chevrolet is reportedly working on a rebadged version of a global market truck that would compete directly with these new budget invaders. The problem for these legacy automakers is that their manufacturing infrastructure is built around high-margin, fully loaded trucks, and retooling their factories to produce a $9,999 vehicle is a logistical nightmare that would require them to cannibalize their own profitable models. This creates a fascinating dynamic where the new players have a massive advantage simply because they are starting from a blank sheet of paper, unencumbered by union contracts, legacy pension costs, and the massive advertising budgets that prop up the traditional truck market. We are witnessing a classic disruptor scenario where the incumbents are too big and too slow to react, and the longer they wait, the more ground they will lose to these agile newcomers who understand that there is a massive underserved demographic of buyers who simply want a cheap, honest truck. Beyond the powertrain and the price, the design philosophy of these new budget trucks is truly refreshing because they embrace a utilitarian aesthetic that is becoming increasingly popular among younger buyers who value authenticity over flash. These trucks are not trying to be something they are not. They have exposed bolts, visible welds, flat black bumpers, and steel wheels with hubcaps that look like they were pulled straight from a 1990s work truck, and that is precisely the point. This industrial look is not a cost-cutting compromise. It is a deliberate design choice that resonates with a generation that grew up on vintage restorations and appreciates the mechanical honesty of a vehicle that looks like it was built to be repaired with basic hand tools in a gravel driveway. The interiors are equally Spartan, featuring vinyl floors that you can literally hose out, rubberized steering wheels, and gauge clusters that are purely analog with no screens to distract you or break down after a software update fails. It is a return to the golden era of motoring when a truck was simply a machine, not a rolling smartphone. And that simplicity is exactly what makes these vehicles so compelling and so revolutionary for the American landscape. And as we look toward the future, it becomes clear that the $9,999 price point is not just a marketing gimmick, but a realistic target that could be achieved within the next 2 to 3 years as economies of scale kick in and battery technology continues to advance, potentially reaching sub $100 per kilowatt hour levels. Imagine a scenario where a Chinese manufacturer like BYD, which is already selling EVs for under $15,000 in Asia, decides to enter the US market with a stripped-down truck that bypasses the traditional dealer network by selling directly to consumers online, cutting out thousands of dollars in markups and fees. That is the kind of disruption that could send shockwaves through the entire industry, forcing even the most stubborn manufacturers to finally build the truck that Americans actually need instead of the one they are told they want. We are on the cusp of a fundamental shift in how we think about personal transportation, and these new budget pickups are the vanguard of that movement, paving the way for a future where owning a reliable, capable vehicle is no longer a privilege reserved for the wealthy. The revolution is here, and every single major automaker is now racing to catch up, which means incredible deals are just around the corner. And as we continue to unpack the full lineup of these astonishing vehicles, we are going to explore the hidden costs of going cheap and whether these trucks can actually survive the harsh realities of real-world work. But let's pause right there and address the skepticism that I know is brewing in your mind. Because anytime you hear about a truck that costs less than a used Honda Civic, the first question that pops up is always about quality and durability. Can a $25,000 truck, let alone a theoretical $9,999 model, actually survive the daily grind of towing, hauling, and off-road abuse that American truck buyers demand? Or is this just a cheap gimmick that will fall apart before the first oil change? The answer surprisingly lies in the engineering philosophy of overbuilt where it matters, underbuilt where it doesn't. And these new manufacturers have done their homework on this front. Instead of using expensive high-strength steel throughout the entire frame, they are using thicker, cheaper, mild steel in critical load-bearing areas and saving weight by using aluminum and composites in non-structural panels like the hood, the doors, and the bedsides. This means that the chassis and the suspension components are actually more robust than what you would find on a $60,000 luxury truck because they are designed to handle maximum payload capacity without any of the fancy adaptive dampers or air suspension that can fail expensively. You are getting a truck that might ride a bit rougher and lack the sound deadening of its premium cousins, but it will start up every single morning, take a beating on the job site, and keep going without throwing a single check engine light for 100,000 miles. Now, we have to talk about the elephant that is the dealer experience, because even if these trucks are priced at $9,999 on the manufacturer's website, the reality of walking into a showroom and driving one off the lot is a completely different story that involves markups, add-ons, and financing tricks that can quickly inflate that price by thousands of dollars. The smartest buyers in 2026 are bypassing traditional dealerships entirely and ordering directly from the manufacturer online, a trend that Tesla pioneered, but that these new budget truck brands are taking to the next level. By eliminating the middleman, you are not only saving on dealer fees and dock charges, but you are also avoiding the high-pressure sales tactics that push you into extended warranties, paint protection, and nitrogen-filled tires that you absolutely do not need. Furthermore, financing a truck at this price point is a completely different game because a $10,000 loan over 5 years at a reasonable interest rate means monthly payments that are lower than most people's cell phone bills, making truck ownership accessible to a whole new demographic of young professionals, small business owners, and even high school graduates who need reliable transportation for their first jobs. This is not just a vehicle purchase. It is a financial lifeline that can help people start their own landscaping businesses, mobile detailing services, or handyman operations without needing to take on crippling debt before they even earn their first dollar. And if you think the domestic market is the only one benefiting from this revolution, you need to look at the global implications of these ultra-affordable trucks and how they are reshaping entire economies in developing nations, where a pickup truck is not a luxury, but a necessity for survival. In markets like Southeast Asia, Africa, and South America, the arrival of these budget pickups at the equivalent of $10,000 is nothing short of an economic miracle, providing farmers with the ability to transport their goods to market, connecting remote villages to supply chains, and enabling entrepreneurs to scale their businesses in ways that were previously impossible. These trucks are being built with high ground clearance, snorkel-ready air intakes, and reinforced underbody protection to handle roads that would destroy a typical American sedan. And they are doing it all with engines that can run on low-quality fuel without stalling or detonating.